Special counsel Robert Mueller may have scored his first big win this week with the conviction of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Mueller has kept a low profile since his appointment to lead the investigation, and not much is known about the lifelong Republican. But Mueller's undergraduate senior thesis advisor at Princeton, Richard Falk, says his thesis could offer some hints into his decision-making process. Richard Falk joins me now from Turkey. He is a professor emeritus of international law and practice at Princeton University. He's also a former United Nations human rights rapporteur in the occupied territories and a member of the nation's editorial board. Professor Falk, thank you so much for joining us. You wrote that you did not remember Robert Mueller until a journalist asked you about him. Do you really not have any memory of your former mentoree?
It's definitely embarrassing that I do remember almost all of my thesis advisees over the years. And this topic that Robert Mueller chose to write upon for his senior thesis was one that I was working on myself in the International Court of Justice, the so-called World Court, and I must have been responsible for his choosing that topic, but I was very impressed with the way he approached it and what he did with it.
So you went back, you reread his undergraduate senior thesis, and what exactly stood out to you? What impressed you the most about it?
Well, I'd say several things. One was that for someone who had never been to law school, he showed an exceptional sensitivity to how to understand the relationship between legal texts and how to interpret them in a reasonable and humane way. And it was that combination of analysis and an ethical awareness that I found quite impressive and certainly sophisticated for someone at his stage. And then there was a second thing that was very impressive and unusual, and that was that he understood that the legal arguments on the two sides of this quite sensitive question involving the extension of apartheid to what is now the independent country of Namibia, he understood that those that were supporting the application of apartheid to Namibia had the better legal argument, yet he supported the court's decision to go with the weaker legal argument, but the better political and ethical position. And that's quite sophisticated and also something that I think does lead law to play a more constructive role in relation to the promotion of justice.
So he's a moralist, if you will.
Well, yes, although I shouldn't overstate that, because the thesis is basically a dispassionate analysis of rather complex legal arguments in a sort of technical environment. But he does see the moral dimension of that.
So what parallels can you draw then from the arguments he made in this thesis and his current Russia investigation?
Well, of course, it's 52 years ago, and it may sound crazy to make any inferences, but I think what I would think is at least worthy of attention is that he showed even then a very sophisticated understanding of how a complex set of legal issues should be resolved. And he showed an awareness that law can be quite ambiguous, and therefore the interpreter of the legal obligations and the legal rights has a certain inevitable discretion, and that discretion should reflect a moral sense of the issues if they help to resolve the ambiguity. So it makes one feel that he is not only sophisticated, but conscientious and has the kind of creative understanding of law that leads to important and sometimes very significant decisions. It makes one feel he has the temperament, for instance, to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice.
Very interesting. And if he were one, I would argue that perhaps he would not be a strict constitutionalist.
Exactly. I'm almost certain he would not be unless he had some kind of jurisprudential conversion in a midlife crisis that led him in the contradictory direction. Of course, it was 52 years ago that he wrote this thesis, and a lot of water and some blood has passed under the bridge in that period, so who knows? But at least this gives a sign. He's a rather anonymous figure, and so this gives at least some sense of who he was as a mature undergraduate.
And he certainly was a very intelligent Princeton senior as well, certainly impressive mind.
No question.
Richard Falk, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Tanya. I enjoyed being with you.